we're demonstrating that the results of this election unequivocally ought to be questioned. And then someone say, oh, Abraham, there's been fraud for years. I'm saying, okay. Are you okay with fraud continuing for additional years? Did you know today in Arlington, Virginia, there was a press conference where the Trump team presented 3 witnesses who provided live testimony. The testimony which was reflected in sworn affidavits written under penalty of perjury, where these witnesses came forward to testify publicly as to what they witnessed firsthand. Now, this is the audio I gave in the introduction that you probably won't hear anywhere else, or maybe not very many other places. The first audio I want to play is from a young man by the name of Ethan Pease of Madison, Wisconsin. He, you'll hear, isn't a Biden supporter or a Trump supporter. He felt compelled because he witnessed funny business with our election systems. Ethan Pease worked as a subcontractor for the United States Postal Service in Madison, Wisconsin. Listen to what Ethan Pease testified to today. It's clip number 2.
During the run-up to and on Election Day, I was working as a temporary hire at United Mailing Services, UMS, a USPS subcontractor in Wisconsin. I began employment on August 26, 2020 as a route driver and box truck driver. This meant my job was to pick up mail on a predetermined route and deliver it to UMS for sorting and metering. I would then take the sorted mail in my box truck to USPS. In September or October, I began to deliver mail and ballots from UMS to USPS as part of my evening delivery duties. I knew this because there was special bins marked for ballots only. On one occasion...
Now, I want to make sure everybody's following along with this audio. Ethan Pease worked for United Mailing Services, all right, a subcontractor for the United States Postal Service, in which a part of his regular jobs, including him picking up what he knew to be ballots from locations that were marked for ballots. Continue.
I forgot to retrieve the ballots for transportation and had to go back for them. After that, I always made sure to check that I had the ballot bins loaded for transport. On November 2nd, 2020, I noticed that there was only one ballot in the bin for delivery to USPS. And on November 3rd, Election Day, there were no ballots in the bin for delivery. One can imagine my surprise then when the next day, November 4th, I was asked by a senior USPS employee named Monte if I had forgotten any ballots the night before. Monte explained that an order came down from the Wisconsin-Illinois chapter of USPS that 100,000 ballots were missing. Monte then told me that his post office had dispatched employees to look for the missing ballots around 4 a.m., and that only 7 or 8 were found at UMS. Based on my previous experience and habit of double-checking for ballots, I believe that to be a lie. The following day, November 5th, 2020, I had a conversation with a different USPS employee named Rachel, in which she admitted that USPS employees were ordered to backdate ballots that were received too late to be lawfully counted. I asked Rachel if I would get in trouble with my boss for those ballots the other night, referring to the allegedly missing ballots I discussed with USPS employee Monte on November 4th, 2020. No, you wouldn't, she responded, as long as they were postmarked for the 3rd. She continued, that's why they had us do that. I didn't bring any of this to the attention of my supervisors at USPS at the time due to what I perceived to be their hostility towards President Donald Trump and their evident contempt for the law. I heard those same 2 post office employees making jokes about taking mail-in ballots for Trump and throwing them away. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Biden supporter either. In fact, I didn't vote for either of the main candidates. But something profoundly wrong occurred in Wisconsin during the presidential election, and the American people have a right to know about it.
Now, I said before that I think one of the fundamental public relations errors that has occurred is that there has not been enough discussion of the constitutional challenges, for example, like in Pennsylvania, where a large part, or should I say a significant component of election concerns there include the Supreme Court's unilateral decision to change the election day. Simply put, the state legislature in Pennsylvania passed a law that allowed mail-in ballots for their election, but they expressly refused to extend the deadline for collection of those mail-in ballots beyond 8 p.m. on election day, November 3rd. Well, the state Supreme Court there explicitly said, we can collect them after November 3rd, even though the legislature said no. The Elections Clause of the U.S. Constitution explicitly confines the authority governing federal elections to state legislatures. That's a simple and direct communication. The same thing applies in Georgia. The Secretary of State and a private citizen by the name of Stacey Abrams cannot enter into an agreement to change federal election laws. You just can't do that. And so some would say, yeah, I know, but even if Pennsylvania is taken out of the mix and even if Georgia is taken out of the mix, that's still not enough votes to change. That's still not enough results to change the election. Well, what if Wisconsin is challenged? I know the Attorney General said to date he hasn't found any evidence of, as he said, widespread election fraud. The Trump legal team shot back and said, you haven't evaluated any of our evidence, nor talked to any witnesses. If Goebbels Inc. was interested, Ethan Pease came out publicly. He named people as supervisors at the United States Postal Service. A basic investigation into the credibility of the testimony would simply say, did Ethan Pease work as a subcontractor for the U.S. Postal Service? Again, that's an objective fact that can be proven or disproven. Was there a supervisor named Monty? Proven or disproven. Was there somebody in a supervisor role named Rachel? Proven or disproven. The man literally said there were 100,000 ballots. Now remember, he was only in Madison, Wisconsin. He's not in the whole state. If only in Madison there were 100,000 ballots missing. And how did Monty know that they were missing? If you're interested, hey, Monty, Ethan Pease named you. Monty, how did you know they were missing? Ethan Pease named Rachel. And Rachel said, it doesn't matter. We can have ballots as long as we backdate them to November. What? In addition to that, today, the Trump legal team, let me get this correct. Yes, the Trump legal team filed a brand new lawsuit in Wisconsin today. Among the allegations, because a state law in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin state legislature already had demonstrated an apprehension concerning mail-in votes. The state law in Wisconsin requires those to submit their ballots by mail, they have to file a unique application requesting a mail-in ballot. Well, in Wisconsin, you have thousands, tens of thousands of ballots that were received by mail where they have not been able to find the application requesting the mail-in ballot. Is everybody okay with this? Their state law, this is not federal law. The Trump team didn't make this up. The Wisconsin state law says, hey, if you're going to mail it in, and this is one of the allegations, that the current lawsuit is challenging the legality of 220,000 ballots. The margin of Wisconsin was not very wide. So what I'm saying, no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, are you cool with this happening? Oh, yeah, we have tens of thousands of ballots that just came in the mail. Can you find the applications requesting those ballots? No. Even though the state election law requires it, details. There's another man, a truck driver by the name of Jesse Morgan. He's going to testify. He testified today. And listen, I'm going to play the audio so you can hear it and judge for yourself. He testified, man. He transported ballots from Bethpage, New York to Pennsylvania. Everybody's okay with this? There's a little prohibition. There's a little bit of prohibition between ballots being transported across state lines. Let you listen to him for yourself. Listen to Jesse Morgan explaining his experience with some funny peculiarities with him transporting ballots from New York to Pennsylvania. Clip number 1.
I drive tractor trailer for U.S. Postal Service, subcontractor. I drive a route transporting mail from Lancaster, Pennsylvania to Bethpage, New York to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and back to Lancaster. On October 21st, when I arrived for my usual route in Bethpage, New York, an expediter made 3 references to ballots. In total, I saw 24 gaylords, or large cardboard containers of ballots loaded into my trailer. I then drove to Harrisburg with the ballots. Usually, I offload in one of the 7 docks every day, but not on October 21st. I wasn't.
So why did things change on this particular day? That would be a legitimate question. Continue, please, Marty.
Allowed to offload. That's different. Whenever I pull into Harrisburg, I go around and I get my dock and I get unloaded and then I roll out. Not that day, all right? Not that day. A ticket is always provided to a driver when they arrive at a United States Postal Service facility. It proves you were there. The transportation supervisor refused to give me a ticket and told me to leave. I then demanded he give me a late slip since I wanted to get paid for the time I was sitting there and waiting for them to offload me. He refused to give me that too. He was kind of rude and wouldn't explain anything to me. He just told me to go to Lancaster. I then drove to Lancaster, unhooked my trailer in its normal place, and then drove my truck to where I always park it in a nearby lot, and then I went home. The next day, it just got weirder. As I arrived at Lancaster's United States Postal Service facility with my tractor, I went to hook up to my trailer, and my trailer was gone. What happened on October 21st was a series of unusual events that cannot be a coincidence. I know I saw ballots with return addresses filled out, thousands of them, thousands, loaded onto my trailer in New York and headed for Pennsylvania. At first, I didn't think it was a big deal. In fact, I thought it was really awesome. I really did. I was like, sweet, I'm doing something for the presidential race. This is cool. But as things became weirder, I got to thinking and wondered why I was driving complete ballots from New York to Pennsylvania.
And again, we should just be all cool with this. Come on, man. This is absolutely remarkable that these things are happening. And again, and I said it before, there should all be a vested interest in the truth coming out. And again, if the media, if Goebbels Inc. had any interest in finding the truth, they could simply ask, hey, Attorney General Barr, did you talk to Jesse Morgan? Was he interviewed in the process of determining the presence or the lack thereof of fraud and irregularities, violations of local election laws? Those are simple questions to be presented. Some have raised the issue As to the veracity of the lawsuit filed today in Wisconsin, because it followed the recount in Wisconsin, the litigation there is being headed up by a man by the name of Jim Trupis, who's a former circuit court judge in the state of Wisconsin, where he literally said, quote, exposing exactly how the election processes were abused in Wisconsin holds enormous value for this election and beyond a victory for President Trump. You heard that? I'm going to read it again. Exposing exactly how the election processes were abused in Wisconsin holds enormous value for this election beyond a victory for President Trump. But the fact is, we're demonstrating that the results of this election unequivocally ought to be questioned. And what I'm driving at, and I hope you can hear through what I'm saying, because I understand there's some people who have a sycophantic relationship with President Donald Trump. I'm saying this is much broader than the person Donald Trump. This is much broader. And then someone say, oh, Abraham, there's been fraud for years. I'm saying, okay, are you okay with fraud continuing for additional years? I'm like, come on. And it just reveals, one, the great depths to which some of us that, we adhere to. As long as our guy gets in, we're all cool with it. But if it's not our guy, then you're upset. And this is mind-boggling to me. So we have all of these entities. Noticing Goebbels Inc. switch their nomenclature from no evidence to not widespread. And then they're just going to say, okay, it's not widespread. We have those who formally fancy themselves investigative journalists that are simply saying, it's not widespread, it's not widespread, it's not widespread, it's not widespread. And the simple reality is the way that cases are presented is you go wherever the evidence leads you. You don't start with your conclusion. This is not like a science experiment. You don't start with your conclusion to try to prove your hypothesis. You follow the evidence. And then if you conclude that the evidence is not widespread, if you have any interest in heartening the American people and being able to trust our election results, you reveal the results of your investigation to the American people. Exactly how many dead people voted in Philadelphia. Exactly how many people in Wisconsin for which they have mail-in ballots, but they do not have the unique applications requesting those ballots on file there. How many of those are there? Ethan Pease said he talked to Monty and to Rachel. Monty magically knew that 100,000 ballots are missing. Ethan says, man, I check these boxes all the time. I don't think that's correct. Ethan says Rachel told him, no big deal. As long as we get the November 3rd date put on them, everything will be cool. Like, you're working for the U.S. Postal Service and you are notified that 100,000 ballots are missing and you're not going to get in trouble for that? Am I going to get in trouble for this? Don't worry about it. We'll find them as long as we get November 3rd on them. Guys, come on. Come on. And do I even need to revisit all of the former investigations? Do I need to remind you of NBC's investigation into the Dominion voting systems from 2017? Do I need to remind you as to how many of them objected to them? And so why the lack of curiosity now? Do I need to remind you of the December 6, 2019 letter from Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar to the heads of Dominion saying, we think your voting machines resulted in votes being switched from the candidate we support to his opponent? And no one wants to ask any of these questions? It's a strange lack of curiosity. A strange lack of curiosity. Let's move on. Why you want to move on so fast? I think I may know the answer, but I could be wrong. And that's all a part of the reason why we should want to get down to the bottom of it. That's just the bottom line. And if you won the thing fair and square, you don't have any problem with people determining whether or not it was fair and square. When you caught the touchdown pass and you know you got it across the goal line and hit the pylon before you went out of the bounds, you don't have any problem with instant replay.